Goeienaand. Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, you know how a spider catches something in its little web and just keeps on spinning silk around it until it can't move? I have to tell you that I believe that's what Ramaphosa and the ANC, egged on by the EFF, are doing to the minority groups in South Africa, and in particular to white South Africans, because of this whole conspiracy theory about white monopoly money, which is a load of crap, which has been pushed by one Julius Malema, the Mickey Mouse Commander-in-Chief. Okay, now, a couple of new areas that have come to light as to how the ANC government are cornering white business and white citizens in South Africa. The Department of Labour in South Africa has started to fine companies which are too white, according to the Employment Equity Act. Affirmative action, which falls under the EEA, aims to ensure that qualified designated groups, black people, women, and people with disabilities, are equally represented in the workplace. This law forces employers to make sure it has the right proportion of designated people, black, colored, Indian, female, and disabled people, at all levels of the organization. In August 2017, the Department of Labour announced a crackdown on companies to ensure that they comply with the Act. At the time, the department said 6 JSE-listed companies had been found to be non-compliant and were referred for prosecution. A report has now reported that the Department of Labour is prosecuting 44 companies for breaking affirmative action laws. Now, if that's not blatantly a racist government legislation, then I don't know what is. I mean, when it comes to asylum, it's basically the government targeting a minority group. Now, what could be more of a target than what they're doing right now to business in South Africa by targeting white business? According to the report, 5 of these companies have paid fines, while the rest of the companies are facing fines of 1.5 million rand each. Some of the companies listed as not complying with the law include Sibanye Gold, Denel, and the Tshwane Metro. You know, what's happening in South Africa, and I've said this so many times, is that because of the short-sightedness of the bureaucrats and the politicians, and because they've all got their snouts in the trough and they're so friggin' corrupt, they are trying to take every single cent they can for themselves. And this is where the spider's web gets even more tight. Okay? And here we're talking about something which is even more disturbing for the elderly in South Africa. And I'll tell you why. The pension pot in South Africa, one of the largest in the world, could be under threat as government, whose debts are growing every year, looks for new funding sources. Now, we all know that Eskom is cactus. We all know that South African Airways is cactus. We all know that local governments are cactus. We all know that the Water Authority is cactus. We know that the sewerage section is cactus. You can name any state-owned enterprise in South Africa, and because of corruption and mismanagement, because of BEE and affirmative action, they are all friggin' bankrupt. So what's the government going to do now? Is they're going to raid the piggy banks of the pensioners. And these are largely white pensioners who are too old to leave South Africa. Their money is tied up in these pensions, and they're now going to impoverish them by stealing the money out of their pension funds, forcing their fund administrators to put their funds into state-owned enterprises to bail them out, and then they will just corruptly take the money out again like they have in the past. Nothing will change, but the money will be stolen from the pension funds of white people. And if you don't believe me, listen. The pension pot in South Africa, one of the largest in the world, could be under threat as government, whose debt is growing every year, looks for new funding sources. This, according to the Institute of Race Relations, or IRR, which warned of a threat by governments to stipulate what the pension funds of about 16 million South Africans should be invested in. In its election manifesto, the ANC said it would investigate the introduction of prescribed assets on financial institutions' funds to unlock resources for investments in social and economic development. The IRR said that this meant pension fund managers could be forced by law to invest in certain sectors prescribed by the government. Now, I've just told you what's happening to businesses in South Africa that do not meet the expectations of the government when it comes to BEE. They're being taken to court and fined huge amounts of money. And on the other hand, now they're going to steal from the pension funds of largely white pensioners. The IRR said government had been spending more money than it received for more than a decade. Well, not spending, stealing. Because we know that they're friggin' corrupt. Corrupt to the core. And as taxpayers could no longer be squeezed for much more money, because the actual tax base is getting so small now because the people paying tax, which are the white people, and they're the ones who still got a bit of an income and they've got skills and they've perhaps got a bit of money, they're leaving South Africa very, very fast. So that whole tax base is just going, while the South African government spending is going through the roof. Something's got to give. And as a stopgap, yep, it's the pension funds that they're going after. As taxpayers could no longer be squeezed for much more money, and turning to international lenders was politically impalatable, pension funds were an obvious target, said the head of campaigns at the IRR, Marais Ruth. Economist Mike Schuessler made a presentation on Thursday, media briefing by the IRR, showing the scale of the country's retirement savings pot. Schuessler said that in 2017 there were 17 million pension fund accounts in South Africa. We have one of the greatest assets in the world in our pension fund assets. It is the 8th biggest asset pool in the world in dollar terms. It is the 5th largest in GDP terms, Schuessler said. Wow. If they can expropriate land without compensation, they can start getting into the pension funds, which is obviously where they're going. Schuessler said there were 83 countries for which the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development kept data on pension fund assets. He said the country's pension fund assets were bigger than German pension fund assets, which were in 9th place. That's how huge the amount of money tied up in South African pension funds is right now. Schuessler said Korea, Russia, Colombia, Sweden, and New Zealand combined had $310 billion US dollars, while South Africa had $316 billion US dollars in pension fund assets in 2015. That's huge. That's bigger than the whole of Russia, Sweden, New Zealand, Colombia, and Korea. You can understand why this is a target that's just too big for the corrupt governments and the corrupt politicians and the corrupt bureaucrats to leave alone. A reluctance to seek out help meant that channeling retirement pension savings was an attractive option for government. Very simply put, if government changes the rules that money has to buy the debt of government, we would not need to go to the IMF. This is Schussler speaking again. The problem with that is that they would not have anybody looking over their shoulder to see the corruption or to see the inefficiencies and stop the unnecessary spending, and we would retire poor, he said. And that's exactly where they're going. Remember I talked about the spider web with the, being wrapped up more and more and being caught, you can't move? That's where the government's going. They are so corrupt. Ruud said, rather than look to the pensions of ordinary South Africans, government should sell state-owned entities, reduce its wage bill, and create an environment that was conducive to investment and job creation. But don't hold your breath about that, because this government is so corrupt. Now, what is actually happening is that by stealth, the ANC government, aided and abetted by the EFF or Malema, are slowly screwing the white population in South Africa dry. They're going to clean you out, guys. They are going to take out everything from your pension fund. It's going to go into a state-owned enterprise like Eskom. The guys in Eskom will be corruptly cleaning out the money that you guys have put in there, and that'll be going in their back pockets. It's known that most senior politicians in South Africa now have mansions overseas in places like Dubai. This is their escape option when the shit hits the fan. They've got their own asses covered, and they don't give a stuff about anybody else, including the people that they claim to support, the poorer blacks in South Africa. That is a complete load of crap. So, look, I've always advocated, if you've got money in South Africa, if you're able to get your pension fund moved to a country outside South Africa, now's the time to do it. If you can get your money out of your pension fund, put it into gold Kruger rands. Don't waste your time having it in a pension fund, which is now going to be diverted into state-owned enterprises where they're going to knock you off. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye for now.